I've lived on this farm my whole life. It's not much, couple hundred acres of wheat and barley, a few head of cattle, a pond that used to be full of frogs. My dad worked this land before me, as dad before him. If you'd asked me last year how things were going, I'd have told you we were on the edge. Drought's been bad these last few seasons. Yields were dropping. Most nights I sat on the porch with a beer, wondering if it was time to pack it in. Funny thing is, this spring, everything changed. My crops started shooting up faster than I've ever seen. Stalks thick, heads heavy with grain. Even the pasture grass grew lush and green, almost overnight. Cows fattened up without me doing much at all. At first I thought it was a blessing. Maybe all the rain we finally got did more good than I realized. But then the animals started acting off. I'd walk out at dawn and find rabbits just sitting in the fields, not even flinching when I came close. A couple let me walk right up and touch them. Their eyes were dull, almost glazed over. One morning I found a fox by my shed, curled up like it was sleeping. When I nudged it with my boot, it didn't move. Its tongue was black. Then the birds. At first it was just fewer of them, less birdsong in the morning. Then I started finding them dead, scattered across the yard, perfectly intact, like they'd just fallen out of the sky. Sometimes I'd watch flocks flying overhead, and a handful would suddenly drop, thudding into the wheat. About a mile down from my property runs a little creek. Used to take my dog there when I was a kid, skip rocks, catch tadpoles. Couple weeks back, I went to check the water levels, see if it might help irrigate. That's when I noticed this thin rainbow sheen floating on top, swirling lazy circles. When I dipped my hand in, it came up smelling like hot metal and left a slick residue on my skin. Not long after, I started seeing dead fish belly up along the bank. Haven't seen frogs in months. I reckon all of this might trace back to that new factory they built on the edge of town. Big glass walls, shiny solar panels, fancy wind turbines out front. They pitched it at the town hall meeting as the future of green tech manufacturing. Promised jobs, tax breaks, even funded a new playground for the school. Truth is, I don't know a damn thing about what they actually make in there. Big trucks come and go at all hours, hauling huge covered loads. Sometimes at night, I see a faint green glow on the horizon. Folks around here have started moving out. Not with for sale signs and packing trucks either. Just gone. I'll drive by and see a farmhouse empty. Mail piling up, cows still wandering the paddock with no one to feed them. I tried asking around at the diner, at the feed store. People get real quiet, give me tight smiles. One neighbor told me maybe it's best if I didn't worry so much. Said it with this hollow look, like he was repeating something he'd been told. Last night, I woke up to the cattle bellowing like they were being torn apart. Ran out there with my shotgun, thinking maybe a cougar had gotten into the herd. But when I reached the fence, they were all just standing there, staring toward the direction of that factory, eyes wide, sides heaving like they'd run a marathon. I stood there with them for a long time, listening to the wind move through the wheat. Sometimes I wonder if it's just me losing my mind, if I've spent too many years out here alone, talking to the fields and expecting them to talk back. But then I see another bird tumble out of the sky, or catch that oily rainbow on the creek, and I know it's real. Thing is, the crops keep growing. The cows keep getting fatter. I've had the best harvest in a decade, and I can't help but think maybe that's exactly what they want. I work in accounts payable at a small construction company on the edge of town. It's not exactly glamorous, mostly endless spreadsheets, paying invoices, and making sure the guys' paychecks go out on time. The place has always given me a weird vibe. The building is old, dusty, and there's a faint smell of wet concrete that never quite goes away. But it pays well, so I try to ignore it. My boss, Mark, is this broad-shouldered guy who never smiles unless he's closing a deal. He's polite enough, but there's something about the way his eyes linger. I started keeping my office door closed, just to avoid those awkward run-ins in the hallway. A few weeks ago, I noticed something odd while processing payroll. Some of our workers were logging hours at bizarre times, like 2 or 3 in the morning. These weren't security guys or cleaners, just regular laborers. When I asked Mark about it, he shrugged and said, overtime's cheaper at night, less traffic to haul materials. It didn't sit right with me, but I let it go. Then I started seeing these huge purchase orders coming through. Barrels, dozens of them, and mountains of cement mix, far more than the sites we were running should have needed. When I brought it up to Mark, he gave me this cold smile and said, bigger projects coming, don't worry about it. But that night, curiosity got the better of me. I pulled up the site addresses tied to those invoices. I couldn't find building permits or even listings for half of them. One address led to a patch of woods. Another was an empty lot that's been abandoned for years. The next day, Mark asked me into his office. Said he noticed I'd been digging through records that didn't concern me. His tone was flat, almost friendly, but his eyes never blinked. I laughed it off, made some joke about balancing books. He didn't smile. After that, I started getting phone calls at home. No one on the other end, just silence. Once, I swear I heard breathing. Last Friday, Mark left a stack of new invoices on my desk with a sticky note that read, pay these immediately, no questions. I tried to work late to catch up. The office was dead quiet, the only light coming from my monitor. At one point, I thought I heard voices down the hall, low, gruff, almost laughing, but when I stepped out, there was no one there. I went back to my desk and found another sticky note that hadn't been there before. It just said, you're doing great. I don't remember driving home that night. I locked every door and window, but I couldn't sleep. This morning I came into work and found my desk cleared. Computer gone, files empty. Mark's door was closed, but when I knocked, he didn't answer. I don't know what's going on, but I have this horrible feeling that whatever they're pouring into those foundations at night, it's not just cement. And I think the only reason I'm still here is because I know how to keep my mouth shut. I've always wanted to travel to Japan. Something about the food, the bustling city streets, the temples tucked between skyscrapers, it all seemed so vibrant. Last month, I finally saved enough to go. My first few days in Tokyo were incredible. I wandered through Shibuya, tried okonomiyaki, got lost in tiny ramen shops. Every alley felt like an adventure. One night, I decided to explore a quieter part of town. It was getting late, maybe close to midnight, but the city never really sleeps. I turned off the main street, thinking I'd find a shortcut back to my hotel. That's when I found it. The street was narrow, almost claustrophobic, lined with signs I couldn't read. Neon butterflies, silhouettes of women, words in English like pleasure, fantasy, and even one that said, welcome foreigners. The whole place pulsed with red and pink lights. Music thumped from tiny doorways. Women in heavy makeup stood by entrances staring at me with flat, practiced smiles. At first, I was just embarrassed. Clearly, I'd wandered into a red light district, and I figured I'd duck out fast. But as I tried to turn around, a man stepped in front of me. Middle-aged, in a cheap suit, eyes cold. He said something in Japanese. I shook my head and tried to squeeze past, mumbling, sorry, wrong way. His hand shot out, gripping my arm. Hard. That's when I noticed there were other men, standing near the doorways, watching. Some were glaring. A few were openly scowling at me, muttering under their breath. It wasn't just me they were watching. I realized there were other foreigners stumbling down the street, tourists like me. But they were being guided by smiling women or beckoned inside by hosts. One of the men pointed at me, barked something I didn't catch, and a couple others started walking my way. I pulled free and started backing up. That's when I saw a pair of other tourists, 2 guys with backpacks being led inside one of the clubs. They didn't look drunk or happy. They looked confused. One was glancing back, eyes wide. I don't know if it was some kind of scam or if it was worse. But the men kept getting closer, blocking off the street behind me. My heart was hammering so hard I felt sick. I turned and bolted, not caring if I looked rude. I ran until the neon lights faded and the street emptied back into the quiet glow of vending machines and sleepy convenience stores. When I finally reached my hotel room, I locked the door and just sat there, trying to slow my breathing. I still wonder what would have happened if I'd hesitated, if I'd let them steer me inside one of those clubs. Japan is beautiful, but sometimes the wrong street can change everything. Next time, I think I'll stick to the tourist maps. My mother disappeared when I was 6 years old. I remember the day vividly. We were supposed to go to the park, but she never came home from her shift at the grocery store. The police searched, neighbors put up flyers. My grandparents moved in to help. For years, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and pad down the hall, half expecting to see her in the kitchen making tea like nothing had happened. But she never was. Eventually, life went on. I grew up, finished school, got a job, moved back into the old family house after my grandparents passed. Then, a month ago, she came back. I got a call from the sheriff's office. They said they'd found a woman wandering near the highway, dehydrated, confused. She had no ID, but when they ran her prints, it was unmistakable. Margaret Ellis, my mother. When I went to pick her up, she looked almost exactly the same. A little older, sure, lines around her eyes deeper, hair streaked with gray. But for someone missing 20 years, it was uncanny. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. At first, I was overwhelmed with relief. All the grief I'd packed away for decades came spilling out. She moved back in with me. I thought we'd rebuild, but pretty quickly I realized something was off. She didn't remember small things. Like the lullaby she used to hum when I couldn't sleep, she insisted she never sang to me at all. She couldn't recall my childhood friends' names, or the old swing set she bought me for my 7th birthday. She laughed it off, said it must be stress or getting older. But it wasn't just her memory. It was the way she'd stand in my bedroom doorway at night. I'd wake up and see her silhouette just watching me. When I asked what she was doing, she'd smile faintly and say, "Making sure you're still here." Sometimes, I'd catch her studying herself in the bathroom mirror, tilting her head this way and that, as if she didn't quite recognize her own reflection. A week ago, I came home early from work, found her in the kitchen, talking softly. At first, I thought she was on the phone, but when I stepped closer, I realized she was whispering to the faucet, hands cupped under the flow of water, eyes closed. She startled when she saw me, and for a split second her expression was wrong, almost hungry. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying it all in my head, the gaps in her memory, the way she hovered in doorways. Around 3 a.m. I opened my eyes and found her sitting in the chair across from my bed, just sitting there in the dark, hands folded neatly in her lap, eyes locked on me. "Mom?" I whispered. She didn't answer right away, just kept staring, her breathing slow and deliberate, like she was trying to match mine. Finally, she smiled a small, tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Go back to sleep, sweetheart," she murmured. "You need your rest." I lay there, rigid, pretending to drift off, but I could feel her gaze on me for hours. I don't know what happened to my mother 20 years ago, if she was taken, lost, or if something else entirely found its way back to me. Some nights, I wonder if the woman living in my house is even human at all. And when I finally do fall asleep, I dream of her standing over me, her face inches from mine, whispering things I can't quite hear. When I wake up, I'm never sure if it was a dream, or if she's still there, watching. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to have a stalker. I'm just normal. I work a boring office job, live in a tiny apartment, keep to myself. About 2 months ago, I stopped by the local 5. Below after work, I needed some cheap headphones, maybe a new phone case. That's where I met her. She was working the register, probably 19 or 20, short, stringy brown hair, eyes that never seemed to blink enough. She was overly friendly, asking me where I lived, what I did for work, if I had a girlfriend. I laughed it off, gave vague answers, just awkward small talk, right? Except after that, I started seeing her everywhere. She'd be outside the coffee shop when I stopped in before work, sitting on the curb across from my building when I got home. Once, I saw her standing by the bus stop even though there wasn't a bus coming for another hour. She'd wave, smile, that too wide smile, sometimes call out, "Hey, fancy seeing you again." It got to the point I stopped going to that Five Below altogether. One night around midnight, I heard a soft tapping on my apartment window. I live on the second floor. I pulled back the curtain, and there she was perched on the fire escape, grinning up at me. Her face was flushed, hair matted like she'd been running. She mouthed something I couldn't hear. I didn't open the window, just slowly closed the curtain, locked every door, and sat on my couch clutching a kitchen knife until sunrise. Next morning, she was gone. I haven't seen her in a few weeks now. Part of me hopes she's moved on. But some nights, when the wind dies down, I swear I hear faint tapping on the glass. And I'm not sure how many times I can pretend I don't see her standing out there waiting. I've lived in Sydney my whole life. Traffic, high-rises, the ocean just down the road. But last year I decided I wanted something different, a proper look at the country. So I took a few weeks off work and drove my old Ute straight into the outback. It was incredible at first. Red dirt stretching forever, skies so clear you could see every star. I camped wherever I wanted, cooked over a little fire. Felt like I finally understood why people call this place the Lucky Country. About a week in, I found this quiet waterhole fringed with reeds and ghost gums. It was getting late, so I figured I'd set up camp right there. I should have known something was off. There were no kangaroos, no birds, not even flies buzzing around. Just dead silent, except for this weird low rumble. I told myself it was distant thunder. That night I woke up to something massive splashing in the water. Not a little frog or a fish, I'm talking full-on something heavy moving around. I sat up in my swag, heart thumping, straining to hear. Then I heard it, this deep, throaty growl, almost like a cow, but wetter somehow, full of bubbles. It echoed through the trees and made my skin crawl. I grabbed my torch and shone it toward the water. That's when I saw the reeds swaying, something huge pushing through them. Then two eyes caught the light, low to the water, too far apart, almost glowing yellow. They stared right at me. I froze. For a second, I thought maybe it was just a big croc, but then it rose up higher, way higher than any croc could stand. I saw slick black skin, patches of hair, long claws curling out of the mud. It let out this mournful howl that rattled my teeth. I don't remember packing up. Next thing I knew, I was driving like a maniac down that dirt track, the tailgate half open, gear flying out. I didn't stop until I saw highway signs again. I've tried to tell myself it was a feral pig or a cow half drowned in the muck, but I know what I saw. Locals have all sorts of old stories about bunyips lurking in water holes and mangroves, waiting for anyone foolish enough to camp alone. I used to laugh at that. Not anymore. I haven't been back out bush since, and honestly, I don't think I ever will. There's plenty of beauty in Australia. I'll stick to Bondi Beach, thanks. Because out there, in the dark, there are things that've been waiting a lot longer than we've been around. I've never told anyone the truth about what happened that summer. I was 12. People always say kids are innocent, but I don't think that's true. We used to play down by the old pier. The wood was warped and splintered, half of it sinking into the lake, but it was our little kingdom, me and Lily. She was my best friend, my only friend, really. It started with whispers. I thought they were just in my head at first, little flickers of sound that came when the wind picked up off the water. They'd say things like, she doesn't really like you, or push her, see what happens. I tried to ignore it, but every time Lily laughed, the voices would hiss, sharp and jealous. Sometimes at night, I'd wake up and swear I heard them outside my window, calling me back to the lake. The day it happened, it was hotter than usual. The water looked black and bottomless, reflecting the sky. Lily was balancing on the edge of the pier, arms out like a bird, giggling at me to join her. That's when the voices got loud, louder than they'd ever been. Do it. Do it now. You'll be free. My hands moved before I even thought about it. I shoved her. I thought she'd splash into the water. I thought she'd come up sputtering, maybe cry, maybe scream. But she didn't come up at all. The water just swallowed her. No ripples, no bubbles, like she'd fallen through the surface into something else. The voices stopped. I stood there for a long time, staring down into the lake, and that's when I saw it, something huge moving beneath the surface, circling slowly, a shape too dark, too wide to be a fish. When the police asked what happened, I told them Lily slipped. I told them she drowned. They searched the lake for days, but they never found her. Eventually, people stopped looking and moved on. Except me. I left that town the first chance I got, moved miles away, started over. But there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about Lily, about what I did. People invite me to the beach, to lakeside cabins, even just fishing trips, and I always find an excuse to stay home. Because I can't stand the idea of standing near the water again. I know what's waiting beneath the surface, and I'll never go back. Need some advice. I think my grandma might be a cannibal. Hey, so I know this sounds insane. Honestly, I'm half hoping you all will roast me for being paranoid and tell me to get off Reddit. But I need to get this off my chest. I, 28M, grew up spending weekends at my grandmother's house. She's this tiny silver-haired lady who wears floral aprons and always smells like cinnamon. Her house is stuffed with butterfly trinkets, glass butterflies, paintings, even this huge stained glass window of a monarch. When I was a kid, she'd tuck me in and tell me these weird bedtime stories. Her favorite was about a giant butterfly that finds a dead body in the woods and eats it, bit by bit, until there's nothing left but bones. She'd always end it by saying, "That's the way of nature, dear. Even pretty things have to feed." I thought it was just a creepy old folk tale. But lately, I don't know. A few weeks ago, I was helping her clean out the garage. She left me to sort some boxes, and I found this old tin with teeth inside. Human teeth. Different sizes, like from different people. When I asked about it, she laughed and said, "Oh, just keepsakes from when the family lost their baby teeth." Except there were way too many, and some looked adult-sized. Then there's her freezer. It's always packed with unlabeled Ziploc bags of meat. I mean, packed like she buys whole animals and just carves them up. When I asked what it was, she smiled and said, "Special cuts I get from a friend. You wouldn't know how to cook them." She also gets really intense at the dinner table, watches people eat with this hungry sort of fascination. Sometimes she doesn't even touch her own plate, just sits there, eyes darting from fork to mouth. The other thing is the butterflies. They're everywhere, but I realized recently she doesn't just collect them. She has them pinned in shadow boxes, with tiny labels that say things like first taste or homecoming. Last night I couldn't sleep. I went downstairs for water and found her in the kitchen, sharpening a long carving knife, humming under her breath. When she saw me, she jumped like she'd been caught doing something wrong, then smiled that same sweet grandma smile. I'm supposed to go to her place for Thanksgiving next week. The whole family will be there. And she's been texting me nonstop about how excited she is to cook us something extra special. I don't know what to do. Part of me feels like I've spun myself into a horror story out of nothing. She's just a weird old lady with eccentric tastes, right? But another part of me keeps remembering those stories she used to tell, about how even the prettiest things have to feed. So, yeah, What would you guys do? Should I still go to dinner? The 3rd of March. Decided to start keeping a diary. I read somewhere it can help clear your head, sort out racing thoughts. God knows I have enough of those lately. Work's been stressful. The apartment feels too quiet. Maybe getting things on paper will help. The 8th of March. Couldn't sleep again last night. I keep hearing faint noises tapping, like fingernails on glass. Probably just the old pipes or neighbors. Or mice. Funny, I keep seeing tiny shadows dart across the floor. When I turn my head, nothing's there. Must be my eyes playing tricks. The 12th of March. Dreamt about teeth. Not my own, just piles of teeth, scattered across a white floor, some still red with blood. Woke up with my jaw aching. Maybe I'm grinding in my sleep. The 15th of March. Went for a walk today to clear my head. I keep noticing people staring at me. Their faces are all wrong somehow. Too symmetrical, eyes too bright, like masks. When I smiled at a woman passing by, she didn't smile back, just tilted her head like she was studying me. The 19th of March. I keep thinking about how thin the walls of this apartment must be, how easily something could slip through, or how easily I could slip out. Sometimes I press my ear against the drywall and swear I hear breathing. The 22nd of March. Something's different about my reflection. I catch it moving when I'm still. Just a flicker and eye twitch, the corner of a mouth pulling up. Almost like it's mocking me. The 25th of March. They're trying to watch me. I found a tiny hole drilled in the wall behind my bookshelf. It's no bigger than a pencil tip, but it's there. Someone's on the other side. I put tape over it. But now I wonder how many more holes there are. The 27th of March. Can't stop thinking about how fragile people are. Skin, muscle, bone, all so easily torn apart. Sometimes I imagine pushing my thumb into someone's throat just to see how much pressure it would take before something gives. It's just a thought. I'd never act on it. Probably. The 30th of March. I stayed up all night, listening. They whisper to me now. From the vents, from the drains, little voices. They tell me secrets. They say I've been chosen for something important. The 2nd of April. Saw my reflection smile at me again. This time it mouthed something. I couldn't hear it, but I know what it said. Soon. The 5th of April. People keep looking at me funny on the street. I know they're in on it. All of them. Watching, judging. They think I'm too weak to do what needs to be done. I'll prove them wrong. The 8th of April. Woke up with dirt under my fingernails. Not sure why. There's mud on my shoes too. Can't remember going outside last night. But my hands ache, like I've been digging. The 10th of April. They're getting impatient. The whispers say it's time, that everything will make sense once I finally let go. I think I understand now. I see how beautiful the world really is beneath the skin of it all. The 11th of April. Tonight. It has to be tonight. They're waiting for me. I can't disappoint them. When you read this, please understand I did it because I finally see. I finally know. Have you ever been to the Appalachian Mountains? There's something about them. They are older than almost any other range on Earth, worn down by time until they're more like rolling waves than jagged peaks. They've been around since before the dinosaurs, and if you stand still long enough, you can almost feel that age humming under your feet. Last October, I decided to take a solo trip out there. I'm an amateur photographer, and I wanted to catch the fall leaves at their peak. I picked a remote trail in the heart of the Appalachians, somewhere quiet, far from the usual tourist overlooks. When I stopped at a little gas station on the way in, the old man behind the counter asked where I was headed. I told him, smiling, expecting the usual friendly chatter. Instead, his face went flat. "Best stick close to town," he muttered, handing me my change without meeting my eyes. I laughed it off. Locals always like to spook tourists, right? The first couple days were perfect. Crisp air, gold and red leaves drifting down like confetti, the forest alive with bird song. I took dozens of photos, cooked over a little camp stove, felt more relaxed than I had in years. But on the third night, I woke up to noises outside my tent. At first, I thought it was just raccoons, little scrabbling sounds, a soft chuff of breath. Then I heard something that made my stomach drop. It was a voice, not talking exactly, more like humming, low and tuneless, circling my campsite. I held my breath, clutching the knife I kept by my sleeping bag. Eventually, it faded into the trees. Come morning, I found footprints in the damp earth around my tent. Bare footprints, long toes, deep arches, definitely human. I tried to convince myself it was just another hiker, maybe someone living rough out here. Weird, sure, but not necessarily dangerous. That afternoon, I hiked deeper, hoping to get some shots of a ridgeline I'd seen on my map. The trail was little more than a deer path by then. I started noticing odd things. Small animal bones strung up in trees, strips of bark peeled away in long ragged curls like something had clawed it off. I told myself it was just the wilderness, nature's messy. Then I stumbled onto what looked like a camp. A circle of stones, black with old soot. Around it were piles of leaves and moss that, at first glance, looked like bedding, but there were too many, half a dozen or more. Above the camp, tied to a tree with coarse rope, was a small bundle. When I got closer, I realized it was made of sticks and bird feathers knotted together with what looked disturbingly like hair. That was enough for me. I turned back, deciding I'd had my fill of local color. But as I walked, I got the prickling sense I wasn't alone. Every so often, I'd hear a whistle off to my left, short and sharp. Then, after a beat, another would answer on my right. I picked up my pace. By dusk, I was practically jogging. My camp was still a mile off when I heard it again. That low humming. Only now it was joined by a second voice, higher pitched, weaving around the first. I broke into a run. I didn't stop until I burst into my campsite, chest heaving. I grabbed my pack, barely bothered with my gear, and set off with my flashlight, determined to make it to the trailhead even if it meant hiking all night. The light barely cut through the trees. Every snap of a twig made me flinch. Then maybe an hour in, I caught movement. Up ahead, partially hidden by the brush, was a shape crouched low. At first, I thought it was a bear, but then it stood. There was a man, or at least it had been once, naked except for a tangle of what might have been animal pelts slung across one shoulder. Hair hung in long, filthy ropes. The skin was stretched tight over bones, pale and dirty, ribs jutting out like knives. He stared at me with eyes that caught the light and glowed faintly. Behind him, more shapes emerged. 5, 6, maybe more. All thin, silent, watching. The first one tilted its head, then opened its mouth and let out a low, warbling call. The others answered in kind, a chorus of whistles and clicks that echoed through the forest. I don't remember dropping my flashlight. I just ran. Branches clawed at my face, roots grabbed at my feet. Once I fell hard, hands sinking into cold mud, but I didn't stop. Eventually, the trees thinned. I stumbled onto a gravel road, nearly sobbing with relief. Not long after, a pair of headlights appeared. It was a local sheriff's deputy. He rolled down his window, took one look at me, and quietly said, "You went off the main trails, didn't you?" I nodded, shaking. He didn't lecture me, didn't ask questions, just told me to get in and drove me back to town without another word. I've tried to tell myself I imagined it, that fear and darkness played tricks on me, but sometimes, when I close my eyes, I hear those whistles, and I wonder how many of the people who